Okay, this is a very quick thought. Is a preference, an ability? I'm saying that a preference is not an ability. That, of course, sounds very obvious. I mean, how could, a preference be an ability? But the reason I'm even bringing that up is because I think that a lot of some achievements, are due to preferences. You have an inclination for something, you feel like doing something, whereas other people might not, and that's the basis for the achievement. So what I'm trying to say is that preferring something is not an ability. It's not forcibly a preference, but there is there's a case of Dr. Daniel Timms, and right here I see he's a biomedical engineer. He invented the total artificial heart, and it says he was inspired to build it after watching his own father suffer and pass away from severe heart failure. Now, the question is, and there's also the case of Dr. Robert, forgive me my handwriting, Jarvik, he's the inventor of Jarvik 7, the first permanently implantable artificial heart. He pursued a career in medicine and began designing artificial hearts because his father suffered from severe heart disease. And he said, I knew that my father was going to die of heart disease, and I was trying to make a heart for him. I was too late. In other words, my question is, would they have made those inventions, without their fathers, Interestingly, it's always a father in these cases, Would they have made those inventions without their father? Now, if imagine a world where their fathers did not have the heart diseases. Yeah, so would they have invented that without their father having, heart problems, with their fathers having heart problems? And I suspect maybe not. Maybe they would have invented something else. I'm not saying that they couldn't invent something else, but maybe they wouldn't have invented it if their fathers did not have heart problems. And and the question is, would they still have been able to invent those things if their fathers did not have heart problems? And I think because they could do it, an ability, an ability is supposed to be about what could happen. It's supposed to be it's not about what happens. It's not bound to what happens. It's what could happen. And since they could have invented them otherwise, then they had the ability. And, what actually made them do it is inclination, an inclination to do it. And the inclination, of course, in this case was because of their father's situation. And what I'm trying to say is that perhaps, a lot of achievements are, perhaps a lot of other achievements are due to an inclination. Maybe you're very curious. Maybe you really like math. Maybe you really like science, or a particular subject, of course. Maybe that's why some people just get obsessed over things. And what I'm trying to say is that getting obsessed, is not itself an ability. I would say. You could get very obsessed with something, and it doesn't mean that you have some ability. And being obsessed and so interested in a question so as to spend your days thinking about it, while someone else who could have figured it out doesn't want to, is not a superior ability, since the other person could potentially have done it. And ability is about potential. It's about potential. If you could have done something, and in other words, you might have something like a very good memory, Maybe you have hyperphantasia, like Tesla, Tesla apparently could very vividly visualize inventions, and maybe you have that, maybe you're able to do that, and that would be an ability other people don't have, and but it's So I'm not. So I'm just trying to say that the obsession part, which is tends to appear in scientists, inventors, and stuff, the obsession, that part might not be. That I would argue it could not be considered an ability. Okay, so that is being obsessed with something. As I said, I'm not sure I would call that an ability. And now there's an idea that some psychologists have, that we start out with a small ability, larger ability than other people, and that gives us, because we're able to do something that somebody else can't do, it's easy for us. It gives us a little bit of preference, and that preference helps us build more ability. And then it goes back, and we get better and better, and down the line, you're much better than somebody else at something. There's that idea, and maybe we just start out with a preference. Who knows? Maybe we start out with some preference. In some cases at least, preferences, and you get the ability from practice, from obsessing, from thinking, from about things in that way, and maybe that's partially how we get, stuff like some things like intelligence. Maybe to some extent, as I was saying in a previous video, maybe some of intelligence is due to ability. As Edward Teller in that video I was, was saying about John von Neumann, if you remember. Anyway, yes. So, it's just that I have a suspicion that to some extent, a lot of achievements and, perhaps some abilities stem from preferences, and, and preference itself, is I don't think should be considered an ability. And, yes, and that was just a quick thought, even though I meandered, and thank you for watching, and, please remember to like and subscribe, and see you next time.